I was 41 the year I learned my family had a caption for me, and the caption was a joke. 6 words, 1 laughing emoji, and a photo of a beach I paid to help them reach. Best trip ever, when she's not around, LOL. I am a forensic accountant. I have spent 17 years finding the sentence hiding inside a spreadsheet, the transaction someone thought no one would ever read twice. I did not expect to find it in an Instagram caption. But a ledger is a ledger, whether it's written in numbers or in laughter at somebody's expense, and I read it the way I read everything. Twice. Then a third time, to be sure I hadn't misunderstood the tone. I hadn't. Welcome back to Wise Dad Tales, the channel where quiet people keep the receipts and family learns that boundaries have a price. If stories about dignity, documents, and consequences are your thing, drop a comment and subscribe, because this one has a spreadsheet in it, and I promise you, by the end, you will care about a spreadsheet more than you thought possible. My name doesn't matter yet. What matters is what I do for a living, because it is the only reason any of what follows was possible. I read numbers the way other people read faces. A balance sheet tells me who's lying before they open their mouth. A pattern of withdrawals tells me a story better than a confession would, because numbers don't know how to perform remorse. They just sit there, being true. I learned that skill because someone taught it to me. His name was Walter. He was my husband's father, and for 11 years, he was the only person in that family who ever asked me a question and then actually waited, for the answer. I married into the Holloway family at 29. My husband, Dean, was the middle child, the quiet one, the one who mowed lawns and drove people to airports and never once, in the whole time I knew him, said a cruel thing about anyone at that table. He died 4 years ago. A highway, black ice, a truck that didn't stop in time. I was 37. I have not remarried, and I have not needed to explain why, because grief is not a debt you owe anyone an itemized account of. What I inherited, along with his absence, was his family. And in the Holloway family, there is an economy, and I did not understand its terms until I had already been paying into it for over a decade. Here is the arithmetic they ran on me, though none of them would ever say it out loud. She shows up. She pays for things. She fixes what breaks. She does not ask for anything back because she is grateful just to be included. I want to be precise about this, because precision is the only thing I have ever trusted. I was never told this was the deal. I simply kept making the payments, and no one ever once offered me a receipt. Walter noticed. Walter always noticed. He was the patriarch, not because he demanded it, but because he was the only one in that family who ever built anything instead of just inheriting it. A hardware supply business, 41 years, sold 2 years before he died for a number that made his children's eyes change shape when they heard it. He kept his ledgers the old-fashioned way, in a leather binder, every entry in his own handwriting, and once, just once, he let me look through one with him at his kitchen table, and he said, "Numbers don't flatter you, sweetheart." That's why I trust them more than people. I should have written that down. Instead, I remembered it, which turned out to be enough. Walter died in March. Pancreatic cancer, 4 months from diagnosis to the end, and I was there for 31 of those days in ways his own children were not. I know the number, because I was the one keeping the hospital binder, the one tracking medications on a spreadsheet, because his nurses said most families lose track, and I was terrified of losing track of the last thing I could still do for him. I did not do it for a will. I want that stated plainly, once, and then I will never mention it again, because it is beneath the point of this story to keep defending myself. I did it because he was the only Holloway who ever made me feel like a person and not a service. The betrayal did not happen in a single moment. It happened over one long weekend, and it happened in writing, which, for someone like me, is the same as happening in permanent ink. It started with a text on a Tuesday in late August, 4 months after Walter's funeral. My sister-in-law, Priscilla, in the family group chat, doing Labor Day at the lake house this year. Dad would have wanted us all together. Booking the boat for Saturday, everyone in. I typed, "I'm in, just tell me what to bring," at 6:47 p.m. I remember the time because I still have the screenshot, and forensic habit means I always have the screenshot. By Thursday, the group chat had gone quiet in the specific way that group chats go quiet when a second, smaller conversation has opened up somewhere I'm not in it. I know this pattern. I have seen it in corporate embezzlement cases, the sudden silence in the shared channel, the uptick of activity everywhere else. Betrayal, like fraud, almost always leaves a scheduling gap. On Friday morning, Priscilla texted me directly. Hey, so weird thing. The lake house only sleeps 8 and with mom and the kids we're just barely fitting everyone. Would you mind sitting this one out? We'll do a big family thing at Thanksgiving, I promise. Love you. I sat with that message for 11 minutes before I responded, because I was doing math. 8 people. I had personally paid the deposit on that lake house in June, $400, at Priscilla's request, because the family fund is a little tight right now. I had the payment confirmation. I have the payment confirmation still. I will show it to you later, because Chekhov would insist, and so does an audit trail. I wrote back, of course, no worries, have a great time. Because that is what the arithmetic required of me. Grateful. Accommodating. No itemized invoice. What I did not know on Friday was that 11 people were going. Not 8. I found out on Saturday night, the way you find out most things now, through a phone I wasn't supposed to be looking at a moment I wasn't supposed to be looking. My best friend Renata sent me a screenshot with the caption, "Wait, is this the trip you didn't go on?" Because Renata follows Priscilla, and Priscilla had just posted a group photo. 11 people on a dock, cocktails raised, golden hour light doing exactly what golden hour light is paid to do. And the caption, sitting right there under all that sunshine. Best trip ever, when she's not around, lol. 41 likes by the time I saw it. 6 comments, one of them from Dean's cousin Marisol, OMG stop, face with tears of joy, face with tears of joy, as if the joke were self-evidently, universally funny. As if I were a shared inconvenience the whole family had been waiting to be rid of for a weekend. I did not cry. I want to be exact about what I did instead, because it is more honest than any description of feeling could be. I opened my laptop. I created a folder. I named it Labor Day. I took a screenshot of the post, the caption, the likes, the comments, the timestamp, 4:12 p.m., and I saved it at full resolution because compressed images lose metadata, and metadata is admissible in a way that memory is not. Then I sat with my coffee going cold beside me, and I read the caption a third time, the way I read everything that matters. Twice for content. Once more for what it reveals about the person who wrote it. When she's not around. Not when works on someone, not this year's smaller crew. A caption written for an audience that already understood who she was. Which meant this joke, my absence as punchline, was not new. It was a bit. A running one. I had simply never been shown the group chat where it lived. The attorney's office smelled like the inside of a very old book, which felt correct, because everything about that room was about to become a document. I want to slow down here, because this is the part where the reader deserves to sit and read alongside me, the way I sat and read. His name was Harold Voss, Walter's attorney of 19 years, a small man with a large voice who called me into his office 6 weeks after the funeral, later than the rest of the family, which I noted, filed away, and did not comment on. Walter made changes to his estate plan in January, Harold said, sliding a folder across the desk. Before the diagnosis got serious. I want you to read this slowly. Most people don't, and then I have to explain it to them twice. I read it slowly. I read it the way I read a balance sheet that doesn't reconcile, hunting for the number that explains all the other numbers. The bulk of the estate, as expected, went to his 3 children in equal thirds, the house, the retirement accounts, the proceeds from the business sale. Nothing unusual there. I remember feeling almost disappointed, in a distant, professional way, that there was no twist. Grief wants a twist. Grief wants the universe to notice what it noticed. Then Harold turned the page for me. To my daughter-in-law, For the son I lost and the man I still had in the last 4 months. Because of her, the sum of $412,000 and the mineral rights to the property on Castle Ridge, which she is under no obligation to explain to anyone. I read that sentence 3 times. The first time, I did not believe it was about me. The second time, I understood it was. The third time, I understood the second, smaller line beneath it, which turned out to matter more than the number. She always did the math nobody asked her to do. I want her to know I saw it. I did not cry then either. I want to be honest about what I actually did. I asked Harold to repeat the dollar figure twice, out loud, because I trust my own hearing less than I trust a document, and then I asked him a single question. Do they know? Not yet, Harold said. Walter was specific. He wanted the letters sent in September. He said, and I'm reading his note verbatim, give her the whole summer to be treated the way they'd have treated her anyway, before they know it matters. I want to see if it changes. Walter, dying, had run his own audit. And he had left instructions to watch, in real time, whether his family would treat me decently when they believed there was nothing left to gain from it. They had answered the question for him on a doc at 4:12 p.m. in a caption with a laughing emoji. I did not act. I want that understood, because it is the whole architecture of what I am. I did not confront anyone that week or the next. I took the folder home. I read it 3 more times over 3 nights, at the same kitchen table where Walter once showed me his leather binder and told me numbers don't flatter you. I let the numbers sit in me the way a verdict sits in a courtroom before anyone stands up. The first call came on a Tuesday in mid-September. Priscilla, breezy, like nothing had happened, like a caption seen by 41 people simply evaporates once its author stops thinking about it. So Harold said the will's getting finalized soon, she said. We were thinking, since it's just splitting 3 ways, and there's the lake house upkeep, and Mom's going to need help with the property taxes, it just makes sense for us to handle the disbursement as a family. Keep it simple. It's family money, you know. Family money. I let that phrase sit on the table between us the way you let a suspect finish a sentence before you show them the transaction they thought no one traced. I did not correct her. I asked one question. What disbursement is just splitting 3 ways? There was a pause. The specific pause of someone who has been planning a spending spree around a number they never confirmed. Dad's estate. Obviously. I said, and nothing else, because a good auditor never shows her hand before the exit interview. 3 days later, Dean's brother Colton showed up at my house unannounced, which had happened exactly twice in the 11 years I knew him, both times involving money. He stood in my doorway in a golf polo, talking about family loyalty and what Dad would have wanted and keeping things fair, using the specific cadence of a man building a case he has not yet realized is inadmissible. Look, he said, we know it's been hard since Dean. We want to make sure you're taken care of too. But the house needs a new roof and Mom's on a fixed income and we're family, right? Family share. I asked him one question. Which family shared the deposit on the lake house I paid for the weekend I wasn't invited to? He didn't have an answer. He had a face that changed color instead, which is its own kind of admission. I closed the door gently. Then I called Harold. Send the letters, I said. If you've ever watched people who couldn't spare one weekend for you suddenly find all the warmth in the world the moment money enters the room, you already know exactly where this story is going. Stick with me, the folder isn't done growing yet. The gathering was billed as a family dinner to talk things through, at Priscilla's house, 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. I knew what it actually was the moment I got the invitation, a room built to make me feel outnumbered into surrender, before anyone in it knew what I actually had. I accepted. I brought a folder. Manila, unremarkable, the kind of object no one in that family had ever learned to be afraid of. I arrived at 6:58 p.m., 2 minutes early, which is a habit I have never broken, because punctuality is a form of proof. I am where I say I'll be, when I say I'll be there, unlike the guest list at a lake house I helped pay for. 11 people were already seated. The same 11 from the doc photo, minus Walter, who had been the 12th, Once, at every gathering that ever mattered. Priscilla stood before dinner was even served, wine glass raised, and delivered what I can only describe as a verdict dressed as a toast. We just think, as a family, we should handle Dad's legacy the way he'd have wanted, together, fairly, no outside complications. We know some people have gotten attached to things that were never really theirs. But blood comes first. That's just how the Halloways do it. 11 faces turned toward me. I understood, with total clarity, that they believed I was about to be told what I was owed, and that the number would be small, and that I would accept it, because that was the arithmetic they'd always run and it had always worked. "Can I say something?" I asked. Priscilla smiled the smile of a woman who thinks she's about to watch someone lose gracefully. "Of course. Go ahead." I opened the folder. On March 4th, I said, I paid a $400 deposit for a lake house I was told, 5 days before Labor Day, that I could no longer attend due to space. I set the payment confirmation on the table. No one reached for it. On August 30th, at 4:12 p.m., a photo was posted from that lake house. 11 people. The caption read, and I'm quoting directly, "Best trip ever, when she's not around, LOL." I set the screenshot beside the receipt. The room did the thing rooms do when a private joke becomes a public exhibit. Priscilla's face went soft first, a practiced softness, apology-shaped but empty. That wasn't serious. That was just a joke between. "I'm not finished," I said, and my voice did not change register, because it never needed to. On September 4th, I continued, Priscilla told me the estate would be, and I'm quoting, just splitting 3 ways. On September 7th, Colton visited my home to discuss what he called family loyalty regarding funds he had not yet seen the terms of. I set 2 more pages down, my own contemporaneous notes, timestamped the same evening, a habit Walter taught me without either of us knowing it would matter this much. The room had gone from soft to something sharper. Someone's fork hit a plate too hard. Colton's neck had gone red in the specific pattern of a man realizing a private conversation had been filed as evidence. Walter's will, I said, was finalized in January, before his diagnosis worsened. I only learned its contents 6 weeks ago. He left specific instructions to Harold Voss to wait until September to notify me because, in his words, he wanted to, quote, "see if it changes how this family treated me once they believed nothing was left to gain." I let that sentence sit exactly as long as Walter would have let it sit. "It didn't change," I said. "You gave him his answer at 4:12 p.m. on a dock." The room's escalation went exactly the way I expected, because I have watched this pattern in boardrooms for 17 years and families are only boardrooms with worse catering. Soft, first, Priscilla's, "That's not fair, you're twisting this," then emotional, Marisol's eyes going bright and furious on Priscilla's behalf, though it was never her fight. Then loud, Colton, standing, saying something about lawyers and manipulation, and Dad wasn't in his right mind. Then, briefly, something that had teeth in it, Priscilla, voice cracking into something ugly, "You think a number makes you one of us? You were never really family, you were just convenient." I did not raise my voice to meet hers. I have never once found that necessary. "I know," I said quietly. I read the caption. Then, into the silence that followed, I reached into the folder one last time and set down the final page, not a document. A photocopy of a single handwritten line, in ink I recognized before I ever finished reading it, because I'd watched that hand write in a leather binder at a kitchen table years before. She always did the math nobody asked her to do. I want her to know I saw it. No one at that table needed it explained. Grief has its own literacy, and even people who have failed every other test can usually still read that one. It was Marisol, the cousin who'd typed "OMG stop" under the caption that started this, who broke first, not loudly, just a small, involuntary breath, her hand going to her mouth. "I didn't think about it," she said, to no one, to the table, to Walter's handwriting. I just thought it was funny. I nodded once, because I believed her, and because believing her did not require forgiving her, and I have never confused the two. I stood. I closed the folder. You were right about one thing, I said, looking at Priscilla. It is family money, just not in the direction you were counting it. I left the folder's copies on the table. I took the originals home. Here is what happened, in plain numbers, because that is the only language this story has ever fully trusted. For $112,000 and the mineral rights to Castle Ridge, transferred to me by December, exactly as Walters will specified, uncontested, because there was nothing left to contest. A validly executed document, witnessed, notarized for months before diagnosis, immune to any claim that grief or illness had clouded his judgment. Harold made sure of that before I ever saw the folder. Walter, it turned out, had been auditing his own mortality with more rigor than his children ever gave his living wishes. The estate's remaining assets split 3 ways among his children, as originally planned. No one contested that either. It was never about the size of their share. It was about the shape of what I'd been given, and what that shape said about a caption they thought no one outside that lake house would ever read. Priscilla and I have not spoken since November. Colton sent one email in January, 3 lines, no apology in it, just a question about whether I'd be reasonable about a property tax bill on the lake house. I did not reply. Some invoices simply go unpaid, permanently, and that is allowed. Marisol reached out in March. A real letter, not a text, an apology with specifics in it, which is the only kind I have ever found credible, given what I do for a living. We have had coffee twice since. I do not know yet what she'll become to me. I know she's the only one who asked the question that actually mattered. What do I do with knowing I laughed at the wrong thing? The caption itself, the screenshot, 4:12 p.m., 41 likes, lives in the same folder as the receipt and Walter's handwriting, in a drawer I have not opened since November, because I no longer need to. I know exactly what's in it. That was always the point of keeping it. Not to use it again. To never again doubt that it happened. I used part of the money to fund a scholarship at the trade school where Walter took his first bookkeeping class at 19, before he ever owned a truck or a warehouse or a business that made his children's eyes change shape at the sound of a number. It is not named after him publicly. He would have hated that. It is named, quietly, in the paperwork only I will ever read twice, after the exact line he wrote to me. The math nobody asked her to do. I do not think of any of this as revenge. I have sat with that word and turned it over the way I'd turn over a suspicious entry, and it does not reconcile. Revenge requires you to still be invested in the ledger. What I did was simpler and colder, and I think more honest than revenge has ever been. I stopped making payments on a debt I never agreed to carry, and I let the silence that followed be the only receipt anyone needed. Calm was never the absence of a reaction. It was the format I chose for mine. If this reminded you that quiet people keep the receipts, and that blood is not a currency you're required to keep spending, take that as your sign. Update what needs updating. Save what needs saving. Tell someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.